So anyway, evidence. Take a second to read it on your rubric thing. Everyone reading it. How many points can you get with evidence? 2 points with evidence. To get 1 point, you need to provide specific examples of evidence relevant to the topic of the prompt. None of you should be shooting for just getting 1 point. You need to shoot for getting 2 points. If you want to get 2 points, it's very simple. You support an argument in response to the prompt using specific and relevant examples of evidence. So you can take basically vocab words. So if you go back to the notes we were taking, there you go. Evidence is essentially your vocabulary terms, right? We talked about Constantine converting to Christianity. So Constantine converts to Christianity, he legalizes it with the Edict of Milan. All of that's evidence. Now, if your argument is that Constantine converts, and that's one of the ways that Christianity spread, and you even talk about why he converted, he's trying to kind of hold Rome together kind of stuff, that's how you get 2 points. So I have an example for our prompt. What does that look like? 1 point would be if you were just using these terms kind of haphazardly. If you said, the Eightfold Path or the Tao or Mahayana and Theravada with Buddhism, if you're talking vaguely about the spread of Buddhism and you talk about the Eightfold Path, you're kind of getting it. But you're not going to do that, are you? Wow. So this is what 2 points would look like. Notice I've underlined some of the vocabulary terms. So Constantine legalized Christianity with the Edict of Milan and converted to Christianity, encouraged followers to convert as well. He did this to earn the support of commoners, as many had converted to Christianity and Rome was becoming more difficult to rule. This clearly led to the spread of Christianity amongst Romans. Do you see the difference? Okay, I've used the argument. I've used the evidence. Write this down if you still haven't. You use the evidence to prove your argument. My argument is that religion spread because leaders converted to that religion, or religion spread because there is state support for that religion. Now we have some sort of proof because we're saying, hey, Constantine converted, and after he converted, and you say Edict of Milan and all that, other people convert. Okay, any questions about that? Cool. This is an actual prompt that was given last year, and College Board has released examples. And so here are examples of what they took evidence for. Roman persecution of Christian populations in the Mediterranean prior to 300 CE failed to stop the spread of the new religion. The Emperor Constantine I recognized this fact and became convinced that legalizing Christianity would unify the empire and bolster his legitimacy as a ruler. So Constantine issued the Edict of Milan and held a great church council at Nicaea, uses multiple specific pieces of evidence in accurate support of an argument that addresses the prompt. Excellent. So, analysis and reasoning. How do you get the 1 point, everybody? Look at your rubric. Go ahead and read it. Good job. All right. So, it's pretty impossible not to get the first argument point. Why? Because if you make any argument whatsoever that makes any sense, you get that point. Okay. Notice there are 3 categories of arguments. How many are there, everybody? 3. Excellent. Great. Awesome. They are comparison, causation, and CCOT. CCOT is continuity and change over time. This essay that we're practicing on really lends itself to which one of these 3? No, not CCOT. Causation, because it's how factors basically cause the spread and emergence of new religions. However, you could have done a comparison. You could have compared like the difference of Ashoka converting to Buddhism and spreading it than Constantine, because Christianity obviously held a lot longer in Europe than Buddhism did in India, correct? They all said yes, those of you listening at home. Coming to you live from Constitution 205, this is Mr. Davenport. So how do we get 2 points? You ask yourself. Well, the simplest thing, write this on your notes, write this on your notes, write this on your notes. The simplest way to get 2 points is just to actually have 2 or more good arguments. Because if you gave me 2 causes, or a cause and a comparison, or a comparison and a contrast, or anything like that, if you gave me that, you get the 2 points. The 2 points are given for a complex understanding. And there are several ways to prove that you have a complex understanding, okay? Let's go to the next slide. Your rubric tells you these are the several ways to get the complex understanding point. So I'll put those up there. We can go through them. Nuance. Explain the nuance of an issue. Explaining multiple causes or comparisons or continuities. This one's really interesting. Explaining relevant and insightful connections within and across periods. So, how did we say Buddhism spread? Besides Ashoka, what was one way Buddhism also spread? Trade along the Silk Road. Although we haven't gotten to Unit 3, does anyone know that in Unit 3 there's going to be a new religion that spreads with trade? What is it? Islam. And so you could talk about Islam also spread from this time period. Even if you only had one argument, which was Buddhism spread due to new trade routes, you could say the same thing about Islam and you would get the complex understanding point because you've made a more complex argument. Do you understand? Now let's talk about some examples. This is how to get 1 point, okay? I'd rather focus on the 2 points. So, if you constructed an argument about multiple factors of the spread of religious and cultural tradition, which is what we did, if you constructed an argument that went a little beyond, you qualified or modified it. So, let me ask you a question, guys and girls. When Buddhism spread along the Silk Road, did any of the belief systems of Buddhism change? Yes, it did. Syncretism, the combination of 2 or more religions or philosophies. Buddhism ends up interweaving with a lot of things in East Asia and Central Asia. So not only did trade spread Buddhism, but trade changed Buddhism. Yeah, think about that. I see a couple of you writing down this good fact. So if you went above and beyond, essentially, your argument, we could do that here too, talking about, like, this would be an example, this third point about how Islam also spreads with trade. Compare that to Buddhism spreading with trade. Or you could compare, like, Christianity and both Buddhism will use, they'll have monasteries, but you'll say there'll be much more Christian missionaries in Unit 3 to spread Christianity even farther, and in Unit 4 and 5 and all that. So by talking about things in different time periods, you would also get this. However, what's the easiest way to get 2 points? Just have 2 arguments. Do you understand? So how many arguments are you going to have on your paper? 2 to 3. Correct. All right. Everybody, make sure you have room on a paper. What we're going to do now is we are going to go over an outline of an essay. An outline of an essay. Are you ready? Wow. Sounds like everybody's ready. Okay. So I have these lines right here. And the point of them is that they're separating the introductory paragraph, the body paragraphs, and the conclusion. You might be thinking, why is the body paragraph down here? Well, what's weird about paragraph 2 in our paper? It's contextualization. Correct. So let me go through how you could take what we just did and turn it into an outline, okay? And so what we're doing right now is an outline for the fake prompt. After this, you're going to get your real prompt. Are you excited? Okay. Excellent. So here's an example of what a thesis could look like. There were many factors that led to the emergence or spread of new religions during 600 BCE to 600 CE, and then I give my three arguments: political disorder, state supportive leaders, and the growth of trade. Now, obviously, on your thesis, if you're doing this, it would be much longer, right? You wouldn't just say political disorder. You would do what we did earlier in the slideshow. You would say that the Warring States period leads to the creation of Taoism and Confucianism and all that. Now, paragraph 2 is going to be your what? Contextualization. What's happening during the time period that relates to the prompt? Example, the rise of new large states and trade networks. Now, I'll give you time to write this all down, but I really want you to understand how it is that this turns into a paper. And I've color-coded this so you can understand that you take your first argument. What's the first argument? Political disorder. And that first argument becomes your body paragraph 1. Argument 1. Arg 1. The very first thing, the very first sentence forever and ever and ever on any paper you write in WAP, the very first sentence of your body paragraph needs to just clearly restate your argument. Even if you copy it verbatim from here, I don't care. What I want to do while I'm reading your paper and it's getting graded is I want it to be very obvious what this paragraph is about. Do you understand? So if you said political disorder led to the emergence of new religions, you would just start for body paragraph 1, argument 1. Political disorder led to the emergence of new religions. Now, when do you talk about the warring states in China, etc.? Those are the next sentences. And what you're going to do is you explain your arguments with examples and really just walk through your explanation. So what would that look like? In China, during after the Zhou dynasty or the end of the Zhou dynasty, you have the warring states period. There's a lot of disorder at this time. And from the warring states period, philosophers were thinking, how can we bring China back together? And 3 belief systems emerged that are still practiced. And that is legalism, Taoism, and Confucianism. You could then go even further and say Qin Shi Huangdi, the leader of the Qin dynasty, he is going to use legalism to unify China. The Han dynasty will use Confucianism to hold China together. You could talk about the 5 relationships and ruler to subject and all that stuff. You could mention the mandate of heaven. Great. But that's your paragraph. And that whole paragraph is just about your first argument. And then it's just rinse, wash, and repeat. Your second argument becomes your second body paragraph. Oh, yeah, those are the examples there. Becomes your second body paragraph where you just repeat the same process. If you have a third argument, most of the time, honestly, you're going to have 1 to 2 arguments in a time setting. You'll probably make 2 or 3 arguments for your paper tomorrow because you're getting the prompt in advance, so you have time to plan. So please do plan, okay? But you just repeat the process. Finally, if you have time for a conclusion, it is the least important part as long as you have already given a thesis. If you have time for a conclusion, you're going to reword your thesis. Why do I say reword? Because more of a chance that you'll get the points if you reword the thesis. Why? Because you might make the thesis sound better. But again, completely optional. You can still get a 100 on a paper without a conclusion, okay? It's a 6-point rubric. You could have already satisfied the 6 points here, but if you have time, then make a conclusion. And that's pretty much it. I will leave that up so you can copy it. Examples from College Board. If you go to this link, and I will put this PowerPoint up, and I'll put this great video up. If you go to this link, or if you even just search AP World History Released LEQ, you can find actual written examples of what we just went over. So if you really are trying to understand, or if you are absent and you're really trying to understand what a good or a bad LEQ looks like, you can actually look at ones that students wrote last year that College Board will have photocopied and up there, and you can use that kind of in how you should be shaping your LEQ in class. So last thing I want to do, let's look at our LEQ. about what you can and can't do before we get to the prompt. Look in the upper right-hand corner of the handout I have given you. You may make an outline to use for your LEQ. It must be handwritten unless you have some sort of accommodation where you've like hurt a hand or something like that, and then you're normally typing, but I don't think that's any of you this year. So if you're normally handwriting, you're handwriting, okay? It must be on this paper. There is plenty of room on the back. It must be a broad idea. You should not have a fully written paper. Are you allowed to have a fully written paper? No. It must be a broad idea and really an outline. The only thing you can have fully written, full sentences and everything is your thesis statement. So you could basically, which is like your intro paragraph, which if you're absent, you need to learn about and ask and all that. Okay. If you look at the top, it says answer one of the questions below, making sure to include the following. Obviously, you only get one question to answer. It just says that because on the actual AP test, you get a choice of 3. But you are writing one and only one essay, and it is this one right here. Everyone put your hand on the prompt. You are not writing the fake prompt that we were doing the last 2 days. Please don't do that. Please. Or do. Whatever, but you'll fail. So anyway. Underneath that, bullet points is just a rehashing of the rubric. You have to have a thesis. You have to have context. You have to have evidence. You have to have analysis and reasoning. Makes sense? Yes. Okay, excellent. Now let's look at the actual prompt. It has, like all prompts will have, a sentence of background. In the period 600 BCE to 600 CE, the growth of early states and empires led to the development of complex systems of governance. Okay, now your head's swimming with all this information, right? And you're thinking about all the fun political changes that happened in Unit 2, because why wouldn't you be? The prompt itself is, develop an argument that evaluates how states achieved political unity as they expanded. So let's look at the question here. What's a key word? We have evaluate. Okay, so a thesis might say which one of these is more important, although that's more like an advanced thesis. You would still get credit for just making some arguments. But you are telling me how states achieved political unity as they expanded. So if you want to be one of those people that has to underline things, you can underline how, you can underline political unity, and you can underline expanded. Understand what political means. If you're going to argue something that's primarily social, you need to weave it into political. Do you understand? Because it's about achieving political unity. You can do a lot of things to achieve political unity, but the end result has to be that they are politically unified, okay? There's a whole plethora of things you could write about here. And you, again, will get the entirety of the rest of class, which isn't an entirety, but you will get the rest of class, and you will get all day till I see you tomorrow when you come into class to write this, and you get to write down your ideas on here. Since you only get this piece of paper to write on, I would suggest maybe doing your early brainstorming on a scratch sheet of paper and then putting the smart stuff on here. Make sense? Okay, so we are going to start.